American presidents from Clinton, then the Bush, and then the Obama. 3 presidents, each of them served 8 years, so 25 years, almost quarter century, pampered China and built it up, thinking that if we give enough investment, they become rich, then they'll become like us. But they became rich and started hating us rather than becoming like us. That is what the Americans got wrong about China.
Okay.
And we are paying the price. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised. Let me make a prediction. Modi becomes president, retire as prime minister and become president. There's nothing that says you can't become president. The Indian constitution gives president a lot of authority.
You mean right now, if after PM Modi's term as a PM,
Yes.
he becomes president, there are dormant rules which can be applied, and then you can kind of shift power from the PM seat to the president seat
Yes.
forever. We haven't done a geopolitics special in a very long time because I was waiting to do a special with Rajiv Malhotra, sir. He gave us one of our most iconic geopolitical podcasts. That one was all about China and a history about geopolitics. This one is about the present and the future of our Earth. He's made some extreme claims in this particular podcast. And what's also to be noted is that Rajiv sir has a career built in the world of artificial intelligence. So in the age of ChatGPT, you'd be surprised and shocked to know how ChatGPT will play a role in the geopolitical game of India, USA, and China. So whether you're an Indian or whether you're a viewer from another country, I promise you there's a lot to gain from Rajiv sir's perspectives. He's dedicated his entire life to the world of geopolitics, the world of science. And it's only in 2023 where I believe that this man is getting the recognition that he deserves. So without further ado, this is Rajiv Malhotra on The Ranveer Show. Remember guys, for more episodes like this, follow us on Spotify. We're a Spotify exclusive. Every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. My meditation app, Level, is now live on the App Store and the Play Store. We've linked it down below. Make sure you go check it out. And this is the beginning of an incredible geopolitics special with Rajiv Malhotra. Rajiv Malhotra, sir, welcome back to the Ranveer Show in person. How are you, sir?
Wonderful. Wonderful to be in your city. Last time we did it online, but I think the chemistry is better because we can see each other's eyes.
Yes, sir. You gave us one of our most epic episodes, especially in that phase. I was just starting to learn about the world of geopolitics, and it was an honor to speak to you. I feel you've dedicated your entire life to multiple subjects, geopolitics being one. Let me also tell you that out of almost 500 guests, I wouldn't say you're the most challenging, but in terms of a knowledge bank, you're probably the thickest I've ever seen. And I'm not just saying that.
Thick as in thick-skinned or?
Maybe both.
Okay.
There's a gentleman called Abhijit Chawda. I'm sure you know him.
Of course I know.
So you and him are probably at the same level in terms of a knowledge bank. And it's a dream for a podcaster to be speaking to either of you guys. So welcome to Mumbai, sir. How are you?
Thank you. Wonderful. Just came 2 days ago. Had a huge event yesterday and some more events in the next 3 days.
Okay. How are you feeling lately about the world?
Well, you know, the world, the interesting thing is one of the things I do a little different from some of the other guys you named is that I try to build a model which can be used for predicting and forecasting. So idea being to be able to tell what's going to happen rather than kya hua isko react karo.
What do you mean build a model, sir?
So, when you look at what are the causes that produce a certain effect, then when you understand that behavior of people, of societies, you can say, what is unka irada kya hai, where are they going, what's next? So, a lot of things that are happening, as a predictor, I'm very happy because a lot of things I wrote in my books are happening.
Okay.
But if they're not good for India, in that sense, I'm not happy.
Really?
So, some things are going on which are not very good, but we had predicted them. So it's good news in the sense that our prediction is correct, but it's bad news in the sense that these are not very good things for India.
You know, when you are using the word prediction, a part of me is saying to myself that is this artificial intelligence that sir is speaking about? Because not many people know you actually are an AI professional.
Yes. I studied AI I went to the US, did my computer science, and that time I was doing AI. Us zamane mein AI was very basic.
Okay.
We were trying to understand how handwriting You can write an A. Can we recognize it in the computer? If you're speaking, can we understand it? Now it's very obvious and very simple. AI can understand faces also. But in those days, it was not the case. We were not even able to write a program to play chess and beat an average human. Now the computer chess can beat a world champion. So AI has come way ahead.
Okay.
We never, in my life, I never imagined that this will really happen.
In your predictions, is it the AI of machines or the AI of Rajiv Malhotra?
So, the AI of machines has far surpassed our expectation. We thought ki kabhi hoga, but it'll take a long time. But I'm talking about 50 years because I came to the US 52 years ago as a student to study these things. And what we predicted has come out and surpassed also.
Okay. I love that I can speak to you about the progress in the world of science along with speaking about geopolitics, because, correct me if I'm wrong, sir, will AI reach a point where it actually surpasses the speed at which human scientists are discovering science further? Do you think that's a possibility?
Yes.
Okay, that is a possibility.
Yes. So there's a difference between intelligence and consciousness. I want people to know that.
Yeah.
Consciousness, you're conscious. I'm conscious of myself. Intelligence is, you can have a car driving on its own, which is not conscious. A driverless car is not conscious. It's just a robot, but it can behave like an intelligent person. So artificial intelligence is basically mimicking human intelligence, but it is not conscious. So I think the machines will never become conscious, but they will become more and more intelligent and able to discover new things, able to write like ChatGPT, able to write like a good author, able to produce art, music, able to do an interview, understand the nuances of the other fellow, even understand his body language, and able to ask questions accordingly. So AI is going to replace a very large amount of human work.
Okay. To understand this point further, I'd like for you to attempt a definition of consciousness, because I've always got different definitions, and I believe that in the world of science, there's no proper definition of what consciousness even is.
So consciousness is my awareness that I'm Rajiv and I'm conscious of myself. That is called first person, meaning reflecting on myself. Second person is I'm talking to you, you and I, which a robot can also do. It can pretend. And third person is my understanding of concepts, of ideas, of knowledge, of facts, which also a machine can do. A machine can be full of intelligence in the sense of data, and it can also have interpersonal skills. But a machine is not conscious of itself that I am a being, I'm a machine, and it doesn't have what we'd call Shakti. It doesn't have Pran. It doesn't have life. So a lifeless machine can externally behave like it were a proper human being.
Would you like to enlighten the audience a little bit on this whole general artificial intelligence, and what's the other one? I forgot.
So this whole, basically people are saying is there'll be something called singularity. Singularity means that now it is going to surpass equal or everything humans can do and surpass it. That may happen, but my concern is even before that happens, and rather than worrying about that debate, even ordinary artificial intelligence, which is already happening, is going to wipe out a large number of jobs. ये मेरे को concern है.
Okay.
Also, geopolitics में the country that wins AI will conquer other countries.
Really?
And China may do that. US and China, एक ज़माना था when the industrial revolution started. This is the new industrial revolution. So when the industrial revolution started, those who had that industry defeated all those who did not have and made them into colonies. So there were two countries, England and France, that had industry. आपस में भी लड़ रहे थे. They were fighting each other for colonies. So now it is US and China doing what England and France did.
But economic colonies instead.
Economic colonies, political colonies, intellectual colonies. They put their own ideology, language. The British put their language here. French put their language and ideology onto the Africans and various other countries. So when we are whoever colonizes different countries between USA and China, they're competing. Will take over the economy, will turn those people into basically slaves almost, or colonize people. And this is going to be pretty bad.
How far are we from that reality?
I think it will start by 2030. The colonization of the world by USA and China will start.
Okay.
And right now they're fighting each other to see who's ahead, like Britain and France.
Yeah, I think this is why it's important to study history.
Yes.
Because in the story of human beings, patterns repeat always.
In the earliest era of known, this was a competition between the Roman Empire and the Greek Empire, in which the Romans beat the Greek after many hundred years of fighting. And then the Roman Empire expanded and Christianity expanded and they took over. They became the West. They became known as the West. Then later on, it was Britain and France, in the 1700s, 1800s. Now it is US and China. So you have two competing powers, not only hating each other, but wanting to but their competition is over who takes over the world. That's what they're about.
You live in the US.
Yes.
But you're okay talking about these things?
Of course, that's what I do. Why not? But I mean, it's a free society and people talk about it.
Do you get shit for this?
Yeah, I get shit for it. But I also get praised for it because there are a lot of Americans who also are concerned about it. A lot of Americans are concerned about the future of their own country, about are we losing out to China? Have we pampered China? You see, what happened is American presidents from Clinton, then the Bush, and then the Obama, three presidents, each of them served 8 years, so 25 years, almost quarter century, pampered China and built it up, thinking that if we give enough investment, they become rich, then they'll become like us. But they became rich and started hating us rather than becoming like us. That is what the Americans got wrong about China.
Okay.
And we are paying the price.
Yeah. You compared this phase to the Industrial Revolution phase. I'd like for you to briefly explain exactly what happened in the Industrial Revolution. And I'd also like for you to explain who the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth players were.
Yeah. So you see, in the Industrial Revolution, Britain first, with the steam engine, they were able to mechanize factories to work better than human labor. And then with electricity, they electrified factories. So there were two parts to that revolution. And then France came later. So this way they were able to compete against any other manufacturing society. Until then, India was a very top manufacturing society, very rich. But they dismantled all the Indian industry, turned it into British Industrial Revolution.
What did we manufacture?
So we were manufacturing textiles, which became the first product that the British started manufacturing in their Industrial Revolution. They took our textile and started making in factories with electricity. And we didn't have the electricity. And the other one was steel. So between steel and textiles, they took over a large part of the world economy. So we became a labor and market for their goods. Now what is going to happen with AI is something similar. Algorithms and machines and robots are going to run much of the world. But the point is, who controls the algorithm? It is Bill Gates who controls some algorithms. It is Facebook people, Zuckerberg, he controls algorithms. It is people like that. There will be a few oligarchs. We think oligarch means Russian. But oligarch can be anyone who's so rich that through his power, his money and technology, he's controlling people like dictator would control people. But he's not considered a politician. He's just sitting behind, and through his technology, he's controlling.
He's a rich and powerful man.
Rich and powerful man. So now, this is the return of the East India Company. I'm predicting that it is the Googles of the world that are like the new East India Company, and they are going to rule through their technology, through their algorithms. They're going to control a large part of the world. And sad thing is, our country has welcomed them rather than building our own platform like China is building. China said, we will not use the American platform, we'll build our own because it's a strategic asset, it's a weapon. We want to have our own weapons. India, the Geo and everybody is bringing in the American platforms and giving them more power. So we're bringing in Google. Now, ChatGPT, we think it's a favor to us that we can train ChatGPT in Marathi, Hindi and all that. Actually, the more we train it, the more intelligent we're making them about us. They're learning to figure us out because we're training this ChatGPT. We should be building our own. This is a problem.
Why are narratives like this out there more?
Well, I think the convenience is to make quick money, jugaad money. And the way you make jugaad money is you don't think long term. You hire a tech person for $10,000 and you rent him out for $30,000, $40,000. So we are renting the brains of our brilliant people. We have smart, young, brilliant technocrats. And rather than making Indian technology, the patents belonging to India, we are helping the clients in the foreign countries build their technology with our labor. So all these people made their money, Infosys and TCS and Mahindra, they made their money renting out Indian brains to Americans and as a middleman making a lot of money. We think they are heroes. In a sense, they have done good. They brought money. They've created a middle class. But in China, when they rented out the labor of their factory workers, because they had a factory worker with a cheap labor, they rented it to Americans to make cheap factories. They took half the profit and reinvested it into futuristic technology. They're into solar, into artificial intelligence, into machine learning, into this fiber optics, and into quantum computing. In all of these kind of things they invested in. We did not. We just made quick money. You hire somebody and rent him out, make a money, and enjoy a good life, become very rich, build a high-rise building, all this fancy lifestyle. But we did not invest in futuristic technologies. India is very behind strategic R&D.
Okay. It's important for these narratives to be out there because as of now on the Indian internet, we only have narratives like, it's India's decade, it's India's next 20 years, we are going to be number one, but this is the truth.
So there is a difference between being successful as a consumer and being successful as a producer. So you understand, being from the film industry, the person who is the producer of the movie and whether he's number one is one kind of judgment. The other kind of judgment is the consumers, who are the big consumers. So if we are a consumer society using American products, are we successful or is America successful? When we say we have the largest number of WhatsApp users, are we being successful or is it Facebook who owns the WhatsApp? The Malik to wahi hai na? They are the people who own the technology. We are using it. So we are doing very well, bringing in all kind of new technology, but it's all mostly American technology. We are bringing into all the villages, but we are also increasing our dependency on them by doing that.
Just want to highlight a very boiled down geopolitical lesson I've learned over the course of all these podcasts, which is that if you're rich and if you have the resources, you are ahead in the geopolitical game of the world. So basically, when you are a consumer of these products from America and China, you are sending money there, you're getting them to be richer and more powerful.
Right.
Therefore, they are ahead in the geopolitical game.
So the economy is that we are buying their technology, lot of technology, for which we need money. And we're buying oil, for which we need money. So we're renting out our brains. But we are renting out our brains to do work for them, building their assets. It's like you bring some thousands of workers from a poor village in Bihar, and he comes to Mumbai and he builds high-rise buildings. He may send money home and his relatives may be very proud that he's gone to Mumbai and he's driving cars and all that stuff. But he doesn't own those buildings. He's making buildings for somebody else. He owns zero asset.
Let's kind of break down the maths a little bit here.
Yeah.
You're basically adding money to your family's bank account.
Yes.
And you'd assume that if every family in India becomes slightly richer, they're in that slightly positive green zone,
yes,
the whole country also becomes rich, which it does.
It does. Yes, absolutely. It's better than not doing it. But China is doing it even better, saying we will make money, but half of that money, the rich man who's the broker, because, one is the consumer, laborer, the worker making money, but then the broker who is buying you for 10,000 and selling you for 30, 40,000, he's making a lot of money. And he's the guy who we are giving Padma Vibhushan and saying this guy must be famous because he's so rich. He ought to have a responsibility to reinvest in long-term technology, to look for what will happen in 5-10 years rather than just making money today.
Again, this is why, one, I enjoy these podcasts with you. Two, I find it slightly challenging because I have to keep boiling it down. What I was saying about the mathematics in terms of there are greens, there are profits you see in every Indian family. India generally will become richer. But what we are investing our time and energy towards is making America or China actually much richer. The greens on that side are much
jumping
more.
on faster.
Okay.
And then, we have to buy the technology back because we don't have all these technologies. Everything that we are using in this technology is made in America or made in China. Hardware comes from China, all these phones, etc. And they're using it to spy on us. The surveillance they're doing. And all the software and all the networks and all are made in USA. Owned by USA, often made in India. So, when we say make in India, that's not good enough. It should be owned in India. We have to be the Malik of the technology, not just make it for someone else.
No, you got to break down this point.
So you may be making a film, but somebody else is the owner of the film. You are making a film as an employee of a company. And you may be a brilliant filmmaker, but you don't own that film. Movie belongs to someone else. So I'm talking about we have to become the owner of this technology.
Okay.
And not just the labor helping them make it.
Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to try kind of encapsulating what you said. You're saying produce your own technology.
Yes.
Because in today's industrial revolution or AI revolution, technology is the weapons. Technology is the means forward.
Yes.
You're saying we should keep it at home. We build it here and we keep it here,
Yes.
keep making it more powerful, because those two big players are getting very powerful because of the same logic.
And they are using our brains.
Okay.
They're using our brains to make themselves rich.
Okay.
And so this is the problem that I think Indian policymakers have not figured out.
Let's boil it down to a very everyday level. We have a lot of college students listening to this, a lot of parents listening to this kind of a podcast. Is your message to them, and this is my message, try not sending your kids abroad to study, probably. That's one aspect of it. Like, kind of fuel them into like India's growth. They'll figure out how to make money. India's very different now as compared to 10 years ago when I was graduating from engineering college. There wasn't this much opportunity. So a lot more opportunity now. But also, would you add any other points? Don't purchase Chinese products.
No, I would say that they should put their energy on Indian startups and don't sell out the startup to an American venture capital. A lot of Indians are doing startups, but when the startup is successful, Google buys it out. Microsoft buys it out. So because the man gets rich, the entrepreneur gets rich, he sells out. I think Indians should create the next big Googles and the giants in India and keep the ownership in India. And Indian industrialists should fund it. Indian industrialists should go and fund the IITs to create startups. Indian government should fund these. We have brains, we should be using our brains to create our own technology and own it here.
Okay. Are people like PM Modi, Dr. Jaishankar, and Mukesh Ambani thinking along these lines?
No. PM Modi and Jaishankar are not technocrats, so I don't blame them. But Mukesh Ambani should be thinking like that, and Mahindra should be thinking like that. They are not. They're looking at what's the business model for them that they can make money fast within 3 to 5 years. They're not thinking like the Chinese did. What is 10 to 20 years, 10 to 15 years from now? What's the technology that we ought to invest in? Now, it's good that Geo is starting to invest in 6G, which is the next after 5G. They are. But it's a small amount. They are not anywhere in the top 5 or 10 in that technology. So I think as a percentage of GDP, India's spend on R&D is very small compared to other countries. So we are not even statistically, even officially, we are spending a very small amount on future R&D.
Basically science.
Basically science and technology and patents and discovering new things.
Okay. And this doesn't look likely to change either.
It doesn't look likely to change because the investment, that is an investment where you're not going to get any benefit fast. You're going to get benefit. It's a different kind of infrastructure, like building highways we are doing. Highways and physical infrastructure also takes years. And then you get the benefit. We see that. R&D is a different kind of, it's an intellectual infrastructure that you're building. You will own it. Just like the highway you will own. Nobody can take it away from you. So similarly, technology which is made in India for Indians, by Indians, should stay in India. And that is how we can compete against China.
Okay.
I give credit to China for starting as a very poor country, even poorer than India 40, 50 years ago. And look where it's come.
Basically boils down to different human mentality, right?
Yes.
Cultural mentality.
Yes.
What would you say China's cultural mentality is?
So first, they are able to sacrifice the individual for the sake of the group. Chinese are collective. Whenever you go, they behave collectively like one gang, kind of, together. Indian is individual. They'll fight each other also. Chinese will be not fighting each other so much. They'll be together. Second is they're able to think long term and sacrifice the short term. And their philosophy teaches them obedience of authority. Confucian philosophy, the emperor, like we have Bhagwan, they have emperor. And so they listen. Now the emperor is President Xi. He's like the emperor. They listen to him. So then the system of democracy we have means that there's always elections. You always have to win over people emotionally. And if you piss them off, if you piss them off, they're not going to vote for you. And they're going to just, go somewhere else. So you always have to appease them, make them happy, do things that are popular. Even if it's bad long term, you have to do things that are popular. Whereas China can say, okay, 5 years, you have to tighten your belt. Nobody's going to get any benefits. That's a danda. But 5 years later, we'll all be better off. They can force people into things that are good for the long term. Whereas in a democracy, you have to appease people to win elections all the time.
Some heavy duty stuff, Mr. Malhotra.
So I want to, when we say democracy is good, we say that. I want to offer you a contrarian view. You don't run a company on democracy. Mukesh Ambani doesn't say, I'll take all the factory workers and they will vote what to do. You don't run your cricket team on democracy. The captain decides. It is not कि सारे vote करेंगे अब क्या bowling होनी चाहिए क्या होना चाहिए. I mean, you'd never win if you were democracy. You would not run a military on a democracy. You would not ask all the Jawans, what should be our strategy. The military general knows more. So in all these competitive domains, whether it is industry, whether it is sports, whether it is military, it is not run by democracy, but those who have more knowledge, who have more expertise, they make decisions. But in the case of politics, we are assuming that the average Indian, everybody has equal say. The very highly knowledgeable person has as much vote as the person who knows very little. So that's and democracy is also not something that is a Vedic system. We don't have a democracy. The ancient system of Dharma Shastra and Artha Shastra was not based on democracy. It was based on a king who was a noble king, highly educated king, and he knew what is best for other people. So we have to question whether Indian constitution has worked or not, because Indian constitution also has some issues, I think. A family does not make decisions on a democracy. Some people know more. I mean, some may know more about cooking and what's good for your health, and they make decisions for the children. Somebody else may know more about how to make investments and so on. You do not say, okay, husband, wife, and 3 kids, and you're going to sit and vote and all that, because people have expertise in something, and that expertise ought to be respected. So in our tradition also, there was adhikar, authority in the guru or in an elder person who knew more about that subject matter. And so this idea that 1.4 billion people, and based on everybody who's over a certain age, suddenly he has the equal right to everybody else, there's no logic to it. And I think the future of democracies in the world is yet to be, it's not unclear what will happen, because United States, which is sort of considered the bastion of democracy today, is in trouble. Internally, United States is in trouble. There's almost a civil war intellectually going on between the extreme left and the extreme right.
Okay. We will talk about this. We'll expand this thought about
Yes.
America in a separate section.
Yes.
I actually want to talk a little bit more about democracy.
Yes.
More from the perspective of, if not democracy, then what? Because a lot of people are listening to this podcast and thinking, dictatorship! He's talking about dictatorship! But I don't know if you're talking about dictatorship. And I also feel that because of the history of the last 100 years, we view dictatorship with a very negative outlook. But historically, from an extremely macro human perspective, could a one leader rule actually be the solution? Like in the case of Genghis Khan, like in the case of, I don't know, who else has been one leader who's been epic?
Singapore.
Okay.
So I would say, first of all, a presidential system is better than a parliamentary system for India, because in a presidential system, you have more stability. You elect the president directly, not through parliament. Because if you elect the parliament and then the parliament elects the government, the prime minister, then what you have is even a small little party has a lot of leverage, a lot of bargaining power. Because somebody who's got a few votes can decide between this coalition and that coalition, and you have a wobbly system. They don't have security for the full 5-year term, and they can't make courageous actions. Whereas in a presidential system, little parties can't have too much clout, because the president is elected directly, and you have stability for the entire term. I would say that, in fact, I wouldn't be surprised. Let me make a prediction. I would not be surprised if Modi becomes president. Modi could become president, retire as prime minister and become president. There's nothing that says you can't become president. And the constitution gives the president enough authority. It has never been used. The Indian constitution gives president a lot of authority, but it has not been used. A strong person who becomes president could make the presidency the center of power and center of decision making.
You mean right now?
Right now.
After PM Modi's term a PM,
yes,
he becomes president, there are dormant rules which can be applied.
Yes.
And then you can kind of shift power from the PM seat to the president seat forever.
Yeah, not forever, during the term of the presidency.
All right.
So he could say, okay, I did comply with this thing that after age 75 or whatever age one should retire. So I'm no longer PM, but I've become president. He could do that. There's nothing that says he couldn't do that.
Okay.
And as president, you have your term secure. You cannot be through no confidence motion kicked out and all that. And you can run the country. You can make a lot of policies. So that's a more stable system. You elect the right guy and then you let him there for a while. You don't kick him out and worry about whether he's coming back in 2024 or not. You just leave him there for 10, 20 years. Because you need to set this country right. It's a 100-year project because we've been ruined, colonized for 1,200 years. Colonization is not just British, it's also Islamic colonization. That's another controversial statement. But Islam also colonized us. They put in a new language, they put in new ways of thinking, new religion, new loyalty to the Middle East countries, not to our, this is not their bhumi, this is not their soil. So we have been colonized for 1,200 years. And to counter that, we'll need a century. We need this whole century to recover ourselves. And that requires leaders who are strong and stable long term.
Okay, before I let you move forward, I want you to address all the people who are left-leaning, who are listening to this podcast and are about to switch off because they have categorized you as right-leaning.
So I don't believe in left or right. I believe that you have to look at the logic. I mean, I'm left-leaning on some issues, right-leaning on other issues. I believe in free enterprise, which the right-leaning people are supposed to be. But I'm very liberal in terms of rights of human beings. I want everybody to have rights. I want to end exploitation. I don't want oligarchy. I certainly don't want ultra-rich. I don't want concentration of wealth, concentration of power. So in those senses, I'm not right-wing. I'm more like left-wing. So I don't believe those categories are very clear or very absolute.
Just keeping India in mind, let's make a few national predictions and let's make a few international geopolitical predictions.
Right.
Keeping the Modi government in mind. First basic question is the Modi government going to stay in power over most of the next decade?
I think so.
Yeah. Likely, very likely.
I think so.
I mean, no matter what happens.
No, I think that will remain the case.
And anyone who doesn't think so needs to travel in the interiors of the country to just understand what the human population is there.
Yeah. And I think that in the spirit of helping Bharat, people should become more demanding of the Modi government, saying that now we are not afraid that you will lose power, but we want you to raise yourself to the next level. It's no longer, okay, we've done great in the Article 370, we built the temple, we've done a lot of infrastructure, but we have to change the education policy. The NCERT books haven't been changed. The UPSC exams are still colonial syllabus. We are still teaching the wrong things. The IS people, the way they are trained, the foreign service people, the way they are trained is still the old system. So the machinery of government is still in the hands of bureaucrats who are not new kind of people. Maybe a small percentage of new blood has come in, but a lot of the thinkers are still of the old guard.
But what would you rather have them think like?
Well, I think that, for example, the education policy should be very different. A major flaw in the education policy is, while they are very good for STEM education, science, technology, engineering, math, those kind of medicine, for liberal arts and humanities, they're importing Western human rights, social justice. So the humanities and liberal arts is being widely imported from the West.
Which will bring Western ideas and philosophy, which are not conducive to India.
Which will bring Western social sciences. And a lot of the problems we are facing, whether it's the BBC government or Wall Street Journal article or somebody accusing us of not having religious freedom, whatever, it comes from the fact that they're using Western social sciences, Western sociology, Western models of society. Whereas we have our own, but we are not using those. The sociology taught in India is not based on our social thought, but based on Western social thought.
You'll have to break this down further.
So social thought is like in natural sciences, you're talking about physics and electrons and how they work, how the microphone works. That is natural science. Social science is the science of society. How does society work? How do people behave? How do they work in groups? Why they fight? Why they don't fight? And what constitutes a good society? So all that's ideas of society are social sciences, broadly speaking. But these ideas that we have been taught in India are the result of European thinking. European thinking about their society, what happened to them. They had a feudal system. The church was an autocratic power. They had to fight it. So they did not have religious freedom. They could not choose, whether to belong to the church or not. So they went through a certain experience, and the social thought is the result of that experience in Europe. We did not have the same experience. Our experience is a different kind of experience. So rather than copying the Western social sciences, we have to create our own social models.
Which has not been done yet?
Which requires innovation. So I think that the HRD ministry is failed. HRD ministry and the education policy has not been very good for us. Now they're wanting to bring American and European and Australian universities to set up campuses here, which is even worse. because they're going to bring all this anti-India the kind of biases on campuses in India, and now it will open the floodgates. You will have even more people, more Indians confused, because right here on our soil they'll be learning things which are not very good for us.
Okay.
Abhi at least they have to go overseas to learn these things, and not too many people can afford it, but still a large number of people.
I will highlight all the snakes in the Ganges stuff soon. And that's the core of this podcast for me, because I feel it's important for the Indian internet to know about these concepts. Also because not too many people read nowadays, honestly. Like reading, the amount has just gone, the amount of people reading has reduced, which is sad, but it is the reality of our technological times. So I'm going to not move on to that snakes in the Ganges aspect of this podcast now, but I will ask you just your general predictions for our government on a national level and an international level.
So I think nationally the government will be secure. I mean, and that's what I consider. Internationally, we have a lot of clout, not for any other reason than the fact that the other powers are fighting each other. And so we are a big player. And the Indo-Pacific, geographically, the ocean is very important. It's very important for China. And India is a huge country that can actually interfere with that. Pakistan's only value is its geography. Pakistan has rented out its geography first to the Americans, then to various people, now to the Chinese. But India's geography is very special. The way we are located, the way physically we are located in the Indian Ocean is very, very strategic. So India has importance. If India were in a corner of the world, then it would not be that important. So we are kind of underrating the geographical strategic value we have rather than anything else. So we have to capitalize on that. Now, the overall geopolitical situation in the world is going to be defined by the competition between US and China. That will be the defining competition.
Before I let you move on, just capitalize on the geographical.
So, we have a huge coastline. We can control with the Andaman Islands. We can control the access between the pathway between the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean goes through a very narrow channel. Malaysia has it, and Indian Navy can blockade it and do all kind of things. We can also we can project power in the Gulf. So when China is kind of landlocked, they in the sense that they only have access to the Chinese coast, and which is where there's Japan and South Korea and Taiwan, and that's why China is fighting to try and capture that. But South, they really want access to the ocean, Indian Ocean, because most of their energy comes in from there, raw material from Africa comes in from there, and all their exports go through that. So this is why Myanmar is very important for them, and Pakistan is very important for them, and through Iran, they're building other things. So India is kind of like obstructing in the way. If India were part of this one belt, one thing road, it would be bad, but China would feel very happy that they have taken over India also. So this is a geographical strategic importance of India, that it is a country with such a large amount of land, sea, and ports, very high quality ports. Now we are going to build some deep ports in the Andaman Islands, which is very good. So India is a politically, militarily an important country in the world.
And you're saying we're not doing enough from a naval perspective and a sea trade perspective.
Yes, I think, because we have limited financial resources. We have 2 aircraft carriers. China plans to have 10 aircraft carriers in the next 10, 15 years. They're going to build 1 or 2 every couple of years and compete with the US.
So you're basically saying make your weapons in India and get armed up. That's your definition of capitalizing on geography.
Yes,
basically.
DRDO should invest a lot of money in buying out young Indian high-tech companies, entrepreneurs, start some technology in India, which has defense applications and civilian applications. DRDO has the money, they should buy them out. They have the expertise to evaluate, rather than letting the Google or Amazon or Microsoft buy them out. So today what's happening is, if you and a bunch of guys start something nice and you are successful, it is not DRDO that will buy you out. I don't know why they don't do that. It'll be some foreign guy that will buy them out. So the technology that India needs to develop is, much of it is being done on Indian soil by Indians, but we don't own it. We just give it away. DRDO, I think, is a sleeping giant. In United States, there's something called DARPA, which stands for Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. DARPA is the inventor of so many things, from semiconductors to lasers to fiber optics to internet to driverless cars, to quantum computing. So many technological breakthroughs which have military applications. Defense Department funded private sector and academic people to invent these things, and the US government owns rights to it. So this is something we need to do. We need a collaboration between DRDO, the corporate people, and universities that are doing research, so that the next generation of students are part of their training is with the latest R&D. So not only you're learning from textbooks and sitting in class, but you're also involved in a project.
Where are the funds going today instead?
The funds are going to buy the technology rather than make the technology.
Okay, got it. So rather than giving your money to America or China and fueling their economic and colonization-based growth,
Yes.
you basically fuel it at home.
Yeah, and if you are spending a lot of labor, our labor, to help them out, rather than just making money, you should say, I also want percentage of equity.
Okay.
I want a share in the business.
Okay. I'm surprised that people like you and Abhijit Chavda talk about these pretty practical, positive for India ideas on the internet. I'm surprised that the government doesn't think about these same concepts. I'm sure there are equivalents of you or Chavda sir sitting near PM Modi, sitting near Dr. Jaishankar, also suggesting these things. And you're saying it doesn't happen again because of how the government works in our country.
Well, some of it has been infiltrated with American consultants.
So they block it, they veto these ideas.
Some of the snakes in the Ganga at Harvard that I criticize in my book are consultants in the Indian government.
Now I will let you expand on this thought I've been stopping you from, Rajiv Malhotra, sir.
So the book Snakes in the Ganga, it talks about, snakes in the Ganga means, when you're taking a bath in the Ganga, you don't expect danger. You expect a safe. So snakes in the Ganga is like saying that where you expect safety, you're not suspicious, there's a problem. There is a problem, it's hidden. There are snakes hidden underneath the surface, but you don't know them, but they're poisonous, they can come and harm you. So the places I'm talking about are American think tanks, American higher education, where we send our children very honestly and naively thinking that this is good for them. But they are being poisoned in terms of their ideas of India. And I'm not concerned about the science and technology, which is fantastic. America has got the best, and we should send our kids and learn all that. But I'm concerned when they go and study Indian history. Why you want to go to Harvard to study Indian history? Or what is the problem with some village? Or what is the human rights problem, or social justice problem, or minority problem, or Dalit problem, when we are going overseas to study these things about India in a problematic way and look at it through the Western lens, the Western drishti, that's a problem for me. China also invests a lot of money in funding American universities, but they do it to learn technology. They don't let their kids go and study about the problem of Uyghur Muslims or problem of Tibet, or whether human rights are good, whether political democracy is good, bad. They don't want the Americans to comment on Chinese internal affairs.
Yeah, I think, again, this is not me defending the caste system or minority prosecution or anything like that. But human issues happen in every single country.
Yes.
Based on the current geopolitical narratives,
yes,
certain issues about certain countries crop up a lot more than other issues.
Yes.
Do you know about this whole cobalt mining situation in Africa?
Cobalt mining is actually very bad, and yet electronic vehicles are dependent on that.
Yeah. Only podcasters like Joe Rogan talk about this openly, but you never hear news channels talking about this. But news channels will talk a lot more about the Indian caste system rather than talking about European racism or American racism.
Right.
And I just feel that when your emotions are attached to your opinions from a political or geopolitical perspective, it makes you choose what you want to consume on the news. So say if you are an Indian left-winger, again, and I'm talking as a centrist here. If you're an Indian left-winger, or as we decided in this podcast, we'll call it pro-Modi and anti-Modi. If you're anti-Modi, you'll rally with those opinions that, oh, look, India, it's got so much discrimination, so much minority prosecution, without understanding that, hey, India is a pretty positive place to stay when you compare it to the rest of the world and all the issues happening in China, Africa, Europe, America.
So I have two thoughts on this. So first thought is that when we talk about the Indian caste system and this and that, we should control it ourselves. It should not be something that other people control.
Yeah.
Their interests have never been for India. The divide and rule of the British Empire was not to help one community or another, but make them fight and take over.
Just 1 second, sir, before we continue.
Yeah.
You know what steel manning an argument is? Straw manning and steel manning?
Yes.
Straw manning is where a lot of listeners who are anti-Modi now have already listened to this podcast and said, I'm not going to listen to this guy, because they already stuck in their perspective. Steel manning is seeing the entire argument from a 360 degree
But let me
perspective.
just tell you this, that I have lived in the United States 52 years. Long before Modi, the same problems were happening. During the Congress government, Harvard and places like that were attacking the caste system. Indira Gandhi was fighting them. US was interfering in India's internal affairs during Indira Gandhi's time, during Rahul Gandhi's time, Manmohan Singh's time. So the American liberal left has been interfering with India throughout. The US Commission on Religious Freedom, which reports to the US Congress, set up during Bill Clinton's time, was long before Modi.
Yeah.
So this problem with India is not a problem with Modi. It's not because of Modi that they've started this. This we should understand.
Okay.
This is pre-Modi. They were already doing it. Now they can blame it on Modi.
Yeah. Let's also address the fact that the caste system is a devil of the modern day, and we're not defending it or anything. And it does cause problems in the interiors of the country.
Absolutely. But let me now come to the second point.
Sure.
One of the key buzzwords that they're championing is called diversity. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. DEI. They're championing this in all the corporate worlds. That diversity is good and so on. But India is the most diverse country that has ever existed. There's more diversity of language and food and ethnicity and spirituality and whatever. Nobody doubts that the facts on the ground are that India did not get homogenized as one like China did, like American culture, British culture, French culture. They're all very homogeneous, Japanese culture. Whereas in India, by comparison with all of them, has remained extremely diverse. So how do you explain the diversity of India if there is human rights problem? How can so many people survive, respect each other, get along with each other for so long? Obviously, there must be something in our social thought, in our social structures, which promotes diversity. How could diversity come out of nothing? It has to be promoted. So we are able to promote a very diverse lifestyle. Even in Bombay, you'll see so many diverse communities. Everywhere you go, you'll see that. You will not see that anywhere else in the world. It's not a modern phenomenon. It's a very old phenomenon in India. So this is something the social scientists are not studying. They're not willing to admit that India is a diverse society because of its Vedic culture.
This is what happens when you study social science about one country while you're sitting in country B.
Yes.
Because you're taught according to the fabric of that country, and
Right.
then you overlook nuances and you are not able to steelman arguments.
Right.
You're not able to see the argument from a 360 degree perspective.
And also you're funded a certain way.
What?
Your funding comes from a certain way. Who funds you? And you're part of a cabal of like-minded thinkers. So you don't even, it takes a lot of courage to break ranks from your own group. So in America, the social sciences are very group-oriented. You will find a certain school of thought here and there, and that school of thought consists of people who sort of more or less agree with each other. And young people are trained, they go into the doctorate program, they work under a professor, they learn his point of view, then they also continue that.
Yeah.
It's a parampara system.
Yeah, I see this with a lot of my friends who've done their undergrad abroad. It changes the way they think, and they're not able to have that kind of nuanced outlook on politics or geopolitics.
Right.
I remember once telling a friend of mine, he's actually my best friend from childhood. He studied at Ashoka University. He's often not able to empathize with a lot of right-wing ideologies, some of which might even be true. Even I feel extreme right and extreme left has some correct in it. Everyone has
Yes.
some correct points. What I do wish to say is that I remember once a bunch of my friends, some of whom had studied abroad, some of whom had studied at JNU, Ashoka University, some of whom had studied at regular right-wing colleges. They asked me, what have I learned through the podcast? And all I said is, I feel that the moment you have extreme ideologies, the truth is that you don't know what you don't know. There's so many narratives that are going on because of the world of journalism, because of the world of the internet in general, because of the world of algorithms and these thought bubbles that they create, that you don't know what you don't know. And it's best to just try staying centrist and absorb as much as you can about both sides, because there's stuff to be learned from everywhere. And they shouted at me for being centrist. So then I was like, okay, this is where I switch off, because I think you're on one of the sides. And that's the truth about the world that we live in.
Yes.
And I also feel as a content creator, it's my job to stay centrist and
Yes.
keep questioning both the sides.
Good.
It's ethical.
That's correct.
And I don't see that happening with Indian journalism, honestly.
And I don't see that either. And it's also the job of a good intellectual. A good intellectual can take a position of his own, but he should be open to all the positions of all the sides and be able to borrow from here and there.
Okay. Now I will let you continue about the snakes in the Ganges narrative.
Snakes in the Ganga is basically a theory of it's a study of what is happening that is anti-India coming out of places like Harvard, where Indians go and Americans tutor them in a very anti-India way. And this negative rhetoric then goes into the American law, the way the Americans treat the Indian diaspora. It goes to all the different universities. Indian billionaires like Mahindra and Mittal and Piramal are funding it in Harvard. That's a very serious problem that we've exposed. And then all this knowledge is brought back to places like Ashoka, Kriya University, Godrej, TIS in Bombay. A whole lot of them are far worse than JNU. Because JNU was not elitist people's kids. It was like grassroots people. They did not have a whole lot of power at the top. They could do a lot of harm though. But now the person who goes to Ashoka, the fees are very high. He comes from a very rich family, very elitist kind of family. So he has a lot of clout. When he gets out there, he's going to have a great job or something important that he'll do. He has more force and power. These people are now being brainwashed. The private universities in India and places like this are brainwashing the elites of India, not the lower level social demographic people. And this is very dangerous. And this kind of new ideology in places like Ashoka is coming from Harvard.
What is the ideology?
The ideology is what they call wokeism in America, what is also called critical race theory. Now, this was developed in a good way to help the blacks deal with the whites in America, which is their problem. And it's an American problem. Racism is an American problem and blacks need help, no doubt about it. But now they have said Dalits are the blacks of India and the non-Dalits are the whites of India. And India is a racist society. This is what the critical race theory has been applied to India in this way.
Do you think that's true for rural areas?
I don't think any of this is true because I think the traditional system of Varna was very different and Varna Jati were very different. And now that the caste has been created, the hierarchy of caste was created by the British. Lord Risley did census and forced people into a hierarchy saying you belong here, you belong there. And the Indian government foolishly in the constitution made it something permanent, long term, by giving quotas based on caste rather than quotas based on individual. I mean, if they had said the individual who is below the poverty line, comes from an unfortunate family, will be given a special rating and a special quota, that individual who's unfortunate could be a Brahmin. There are Brahmins who are in trouble. And there are Dalits who are billionaires. So rather than fixing the identity of a person and creating identity conflict, it should be at the individual level, individual need.
You mean based on income?
Income, maybe education, maybe other factors, maybe certain rural areas are considered get extra points because when you're from there, you don't have the infrastructure. Maybe. So now that there is Aadhaar card, everybody is identified. If they can stratify people at the individual level and maybe at the family level based on social deprivation, those who are deprived, as opposed to those who have social privileges. I would say the same caste person who lives in Delhi and who's got a job and he drives a taxi and his kid's working for a tech company, he's a different status than a poor farmer of the same family, same jati who lives in a rural area. So you cannot just treat them the same. And so, what you have to do is appreciate mobility. Give credit to the fact that India has had mobility. So that mobility is at the personal level, individual level. There are individuals from all communities who are doing better than others from the same community. So this has to be appreciated. So now the technology exists, the AI system exists, the big data machinery exists, that you could actually build an individual profile of 1.4 billion people and come up with algorithms to see who deserves the maximum help on an individual level, nothing to do with the caste.
Okay. So there's a scientific means to actually segregate society based on who needs how much help.
That is correct. You can come up with a criteria of what kind of help is needed by people in Mumbai, what is needed in a small town, and then you can come up with what would be the profile of a person who deserves it the most. And that person could be of any caste. If that's his parameters, then he should be getting that help.
And currently, the responsibility of giving help rests in bureaucrats' hands? I'm
Yes.
assuming.
And it is on the basis of caste, whether your caste is like this or that, where your caste ranking is. And the ranking of the caste is frozen, but people are dynamic. People of a certain caste are different strata than their parents were. And their kids will grow up in a different strata. So you have to appreciate the fluidity of individuals moving up and down.
Yeah. I hear everything you're saying. The only reason I'm not completely convinced with what you're saying is because I feel that from what I've heard, again, this is not my own experience, when you go to rural areas, people of lower caste are treated extremely differently. They're extremely ostracized. And I believe that that's also the argument of most of the people who are talking about caste-related issues.
Yes. So those in those areas, since the individuals are treated that way, they deserve help. But you cannot apply it to that caste definition all over the country as if it's uniform. And even the idea of minority. I mean, I would say Kashmiri Hindus are minority. And in Nagaland, Hindus are minority. So if you look at the definition of a minority, why do you say that Muslims are a minority everywhere, even though in some places they are not a minority? And Hindus are a majority everywhere, even though in certain places they're not a majority.
Okay.
So I think you have to look at individual situations which vary by location and very different from one state to another.
Okay. So what you're saying all in all is that all these ideas of religious segregation and caste-based segregation are old world.
Yes.
And now that the science and technology is here to scan the country and to help in governance and bureaucracy, bloody hell, use it.
I am saying absolutely. I'm saying this is one of the most important uses of AI. Because the machineries exist to capture all this data. You can capture immense amount of data today, which would be very manual and not practical to do. But today, you know who's buying what, who's got what credit, who's got how much income, who travels where, who takes a railway car, this or that. You can build like a huge database of consumers, individuals, communities, and keep it alive and figure out who needs help and who doesn't need help.
Will this actually happen?
I think this is an idea which is way beyond the thinking I have seen. It's neither in the social scientists thinking this far ahead. This is a social sciences job. Indian social scientists should be coming up with dissertations. They should be coming up with theories and solutions and proposals like this. Nor do I see this kind of innovation with legal people, and nor do I see it with the Niti Aayog people. So I don't know who's going to champion this.
Okay. Maybe the Gen Z brains that we're seeing coming out of India.
Some Gen Z people, I want you to look at those who are into this new technology, look at developing a national system where you're going to evaluate, measure, track individual behavior, individual consumption, individual rights and privileges, individual handicaps that people have. It could be a medical handicap gets a certain number of points. It could be that your parents are poor and you come from a poor village which don't have schools and hospitals, you get some points for that. It could be that now that you've come from that poor village, but then you have come to Bombay and you're doing very well, then so those points have to be taken away because now you don't need help. So this algorithm, which is dynamic and learning all the time from experience, has to be giving advice to the government people, the planning people on how to reallocate the quotas and the resources. Now, when you look at the markers of privilege, and just, instead of blindly saying caste and minorities, you should also look at things like English language. English language is a marker of privilege in terms of jobs, and not just English. Who's got the American accent? Who's got the British accent? Who's got the urban cosmopolitan accent, who's got the village accent? It matters a lot. It matters in your social standing, your matrimonial prospects, in your job prospects. And people are being, in an interview, if you speak very nice and slick, your chances are better. So this is a caste system also. This is a caste marker. It is not that the Brahmins who knew Sanskrit and kept Sanskrit from other people were privileged. You can't apply that today. I don't think that somebody knowing Sanskrit gives him more jobs today. Or gives him a better whatever, So I think this Brahmanical privilege, as they call it, is a very old idea. Today it is the Angreziyat. The person who are not only Angrezi as a language, but Angreziyat as body language, as style, as your brand consciousness, affiliations, associations, कि मेरे visa है, मैं वहाँ गया था, मैंने ये किया, वो किया. All that adds your profile as a person and gives you stature and gives you privileges. So if you really want to be an honest left-wing, honest liberal, looking for social justice and dismantling the structures of privilege, you should be looking at it this way.
You do know that you are categorized as a hardcore right-wing person.
I don't know how I'm characterized. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, it is.
But I'm telling you that fighting Agresiat, why is it considered right-wing? Nowhere else in the world is considered right-wing.
Yeah.
So in Mexico, the left-wing radical communists are fighting against Spanish language. It came from a colonizer because Mexico did not had its own languages. But the Spaniards brought Christianity and the Spaniards brought Spanish language. Yeah. And so the liberal left-wing want to do away with that very big cathedral, talking about doing away with house of worship. जैसे हमारा हुआ था ना राम मंदिर, उनके in Mexico City is a huge cathedral. It's one of the World Heritage Centers. And when they were digging up the foundation to do some repair work, they found that it underneath was a Native American temple. So that created a whole storm. People saying, isko demolish karo. I mean, of course, that's a very radical idea. They won't do that. But the point I'm making is that the left wing in those countries supports native religion, native culture, native language, as compared to the foreign brought. So if the Indians were true liberals in that sense, then they would want to have local languages rather than Angreziyat, rather than Urdu, because these are brought from overseas. They would want the local ways of life, the local food, the local ways of worshipping to be encouraged. So that would be my view, would be a very liberal view in many countries in the world.
All in all, you're saying that the kind of criticism that India gets abroad is partially valid and mostly not.
Yes.
Because those arguments are extremely Western thinking based arguments.
Right. And Indians, liberals who should be thinking for themselves. A liberal is a person who says, I'll think for myself. Mere ko koi sikhayega nahi. I'll learn how to think for myself. That's the ultimate liberalism. But I find when I talk to the Indian leftists, they just ghota marke, they just keep reciting the same ideology to you and exclude you because they can't deal with your facts.
I think anyone on the extreme left or extreme right of our country is almost always loosely informed, highly opinionated.
That is correct.
And I say that for both extremes.
Under-informed and over-opinionated, I have said this for a long time. That is what a lot of our people are.
Okay. And you'll see this with a lot of teenagers, college students who've just begun to learn about the world of politics or geopolitics, get extremely riled up in their own emotions.
But I want to ask, why would you consider it right-wing for someone who says that Angreziyat is an oppressive structure? And one of the criteria for deciding who should be given more quotas and who should be given more help should be based on Angreziyat as a scale. I would say that maybe you should have a quota for people to be hired in their local language.
I think you're categorized mostly as right-wing because you are mostly pro-Modi. And again, you have your own criticisms of the Modi government, which are not highlighted enough when people are criticizing you.
But then these people are probably not old enough to remember that long before Modi was in the scene, nobody heard of Modi on the political scene. He was in the local level. I was having the same arguments. And the West was criticizing India for the same things long before Modi. This is something that people should come up with and understand the facts. During the Indira Gandhi time, during the Rahul Gandhi time, Manmohan Singh time, all these attacks on India, caste and minority were going on. It's just that now they can be blamed on Modi, but previously it was not being blamed on Hindutva, BJP, Modi. This was a problem of Indian society that they were criticizing. And I was on the side of defending India when there was no Modi around, so there was no question of being pro-Modi.
Okay. A little raw question for you to kind of break the pace a little bit. Do you think our country should be run by younger people?
Yes.
And it won't happen though?
It won't happen. It should be run by younger people because their future. Ultimately is their future. People like me should be our authors, writers. All I want to do is keep writing, talking. I have no ambition or potential for getting any position, appointment. I don't want to be in politics. I hate all that. I just want to express my views, which I have a right to do. But I think the people who are stakeholders, whose lives are at stake in terms of the policies and direction, are young people. And there should be more young people.
Okay. Who's going to be the next PM?
After Modi? I hope it's none of the people on the scene right now. People keep saying it should be Amit Shah, it should be Yogi, it should be this, that. I mean, I would like to have seen totally new people.
Fresh faces.
Fresh faces. Certainly, I would want them to be more AI educated, technology educated, because we're on the verge of a fourth industrial revolution, they call it that. and this will decide the future. And these people have to be not just indirectly informed based on what some advisor is saying, some bureaucrat is saying. They must have knowledge of this technology themselves.
Like an engineer themselves or a scientist themselves.
And I will tell you, the Communist Party of China, CCP, Chinese Communist Party, which has 90 million members, lot of technocrats in it, lot of highly educated people who are scientists, people who are PhDs, people who are researchers, very well-informed subject matter experts in all sorts of areas. It's not the typical gunda type of, you think communist log aise hi honge, but they are well-educated people in the Chinese Communist Party, and they are the brains, they are running the country, they're electing the government and all that stuff. So there's no reason why we couldn't have a brain trust, a sort of a very high-quality, educated youth in some kind of a structure, which then has a lot of influence in the country.
I have some young friends of mine who are only as old as 35, who've actually tried getting into politics, put their feet in that pool a little bit, and then just got out saying, I can't deal with this dark, corrupt world of politics. That's the truth about Indian politics, and that's why people don't take it on as a career until they're extremely powerful. Like the one guy who I've met through the show who I feel will actually get into Indian politics and maybe do something is Ashneer Grover. Do you know who he is?
No.
One of the Shark Tank judges. He's a rage on the Indian internet, and his next steps in his career are political. He's also an engineer from IIT. I actually have hope from him. But I don't know what's going to happen in the next generation of politics.
So do you think that democracy makes it a dirty game and discourages good leaders? It could be.
All in all, yes. In saying that, that's a very controversial statement from my side. I can get into trouble if this statement is taken in isolation out of this entire podcast. I say that even after experiencing this entire podcast and all these geopolitical podcasts, and most importantly, the podcast with the military leaders that I've had. I feel they have a huge say in how the country should be run because their lives are literally on the line.
And I think India needs Kshatriyata. India needs leadership, strength, and the military people are trained to do that. And I certainly agree that the military, scientific people, people with certain certain subject matter expertise should not be sort of the local fellow who can rabble-rouse and he can get votes and do gherao here and whatnot, and he gets a ticket because he can arouse votes and all. I think that kind of a election-based leadership is not good for the country. You don't get the best leaders that way.
I'd like for you to highlight what we began with, which is this whole China versus USA situation, which is going to encapsulate most of our coming 2 decades, perhaps.
Yes.
From 2023 to about 2043 and maybe even beyond.
Yes.
You're saying that this is the new England and France of the 1700s.
Correct.
England and France are still two extremely powerful nations 300 years later.
Yes.
Possibly for the next 300 years, it's going to be a battle of technologies between America and China. What's this entire narrative?
So I think that China has pulled, first of all, looking at the last 20 years, China has pulled a fast one on the US. US has been very stupid in the way they've dealt with China. And though I disagree with many of the policies of Trump, I disagree with him on many things, but on the one thing I like what he did is he called the bluff of China. He really called it out loud and clear. And now nobody, Republican, Democrat, can deny it. And everybody in America is aware that China has pulled a fast one. The American logic was that we'll help them become rich. And when they become rich, they'll become democratic because rich people want freedom. And so the way to make them democracy is to make them rich, and then they'll become our friend and they'll become like us. It didn't work that way.
Case of a failed social science hypothesis.
Totally failed social science hypothesis that wealth and prosperity and a lot of education will make people like us because, we are right. We are the good people. So if he becomes well off, he's not poor and he's highly educated, then he has to be like us. That's an arrogance of, our righteousness. And it has failed. So China is not going to become like America. It's becoming anti-America, using American money, using American technology. A lot of it they stole also. So this is the past what has happened.
A lot of it they stole.
They stole American technology right and left. There are a lot of lawsuits, a lot of US allegations on China, like the Huawei. They've taken technology. A lot of Chinese in the United States have been arrested. This is going on.
You mean the big tech companies in America were building things,
yes,
and this was taken to China?
This was taken to China. Okay. Some of it university research, some of it government research was taken to China.
Okay.
So this Indians didn't do, because Indians have had the brain sitting in the banking industry, in the pharma industry, and Indians didn't say, okay, you know what, I'm going to go back to India and develop this new thing on my own and sell it back to the Americans. Indians didn't do that. Okay, so in that sense, I'm glad that Indians have been more honest and ethical, and Indians are trusted in that sense. Now the Chinese there's a distrust towards China because of that reason. China, the President Xi believes that it is too late for America to press the brakes because they're so dependent on China that they're not going to be able to get rid of China. So for instance, Apple, so much of its technology is based in China, and the Chinese want you to transfer the engineering designs when they're manufacturing. They say that you give us the engineering designs and then we'll manufacture it for you. And what they've done is built their own products, competing against the iPhone and all that stuff.
This is like, the people that Americans are doing business with in China are basically like a puppet for the government. The government is saying, oh yeah, give us your contract. But by the way, tell them to also give you the engineering
technology.
design.
And then they build a parallel thing. They build a parallel thing, and that's how it works. So this, every product that they are manufacturing, they are also building a knockout for themselves and getting ahead. So this is kind of you have to be foolish, and Americans have been foolish to allow this to happen. So this is now America is trying its best to stop it. America is realizing that the people who are behind the American pushback against China are Pentagon, military people, CIA people. They are saying that China is building these aircraft carriers, China is building these hypersonic planes. China, the biggest breakthrough which will decide the winner is quantum computing.
Why?
I just want people to know this. Quantum computing will allow, forget the science, the quantum physics and all that behind it, that's complex, but quantum computing will allow a computer to be 1,000 to 10,000 times faster than anything you can make out of the current technology.
Which will result in better AI algorithms.
Better AI algorithms, but the most important thing is to break through all the encryption. So any encryption you have, your defense. So let's say you put a missile coming to me.
You'll have to explain the word encryption first.
So encryption means that, you have a code, a security, you are sending information and somebody listens. They should not be able to understand it because you've encrypted it, you've codified it, you've hidden it behind, you've changed it into something gibberish.
Say if I'm trying to communicate with you, but it's some very top secret information, I'll create my own sort of language which will have its own pattern and key, which only you and me know about.
And something like a very complicated password. And so only a very sophisticated hacker will get in.
Yeah.
But the defense people have these kind of encryption, which the average hacker cannot get in.
Yeah. So when you have very fast computers,
you can break through it.
Yes.
So what will happen is, if your missile is coming towards me, the missile knows the map of the terrain, the missile has images, satellites, and the missile knows कि यहाँ से left मुड़ना है, I have to go around this mountain, then I have to follow this river, and after this many kilometers here and there, I'll see these landmarks. Just like GPS, it's been given all the landmarks, what to look for, and then drop the bomb, and it can drop the bomb so precisely, within a few feet, it can drop the bomb, even thousands of miles away. This is all AI, algorithms, stuff going on. Now, if I can break the code of your missile, then I can change its algorithm and GPS and send it back to you and blow up your house. Aapne mere ko bomb bheja, I can send the bomb back to blow up on your house. So imagine how chaotic the world of weaponry will be. I could take your weapons and compromise them. I could neutralize them. I could put in new software in them and change the way they're thinking. You're sending robots this way. I can tell the robot to make U-turn and start firing back at you. I can do those things once I can break your code. Right now, it's all encrypted. Only your people know how to operate your robots and your missiles. I have no way to do it. So there is a sense of security. But whoever gets quantum computing will be able to break through all these codes. Your electric grid will not be safe. Your transportation, your train system will not be safe. Your industry will not be safe. The messages, Modi's conversation with somebody will be able to hear. All of that people will be able to do if they have quantum computing. So US is very scared that China is equal to the US in quantum computing technology. They are maybe 3 years, 5 years, 7 years behind, 7 years from being able to achieve what I just said. Both the United States and China feel that in the second half of this decade, quantum computing will have enough reality that people will start breaking codes. So this is one of those, like Babur brought cannons to India. And that cannon was a decisive decision. Because when you blow up the cannon, when you fire cannons, the elephant run away. India had elephant army because that was our traditional strength. The elephant was stronger than horses and all, but they brought cannon. So, that one thing changed the whole future, and the empire, the Mughal empire, could be built because they had a weapon we didn't have. AI and quantum computing is that weapon. It is as powerful in deciding geopolitics as the cannon was at that time.
Okay.
So this is something that will shape the US. This is why US is trying to put a ban on this Huawei and various Chinese companies and not let them get semiconductors, semiconductors. And this is what the war over Taiwan is about. Because the fastest semiconductors in the world today and the future likely for the next 5-7 years are in Taiwan. Taiwan has little tiny island, totally independent of China and against China, which China's hegemony. They want to remain independent, very pro-US. They are the world's leading supplier of semiconductors. And even a company like Intel cannot compete against them because this requires very sophisticated technology and a lot of brains and engineers. And, everybody is focused on something. These Taiwanese focused on this, and they cornered the world market. So now Intel in the US and a few others are trying to build very high-powered semiconductors and factories here and there. Government has given huge grant, US government, to build in the United States to build these kind of things. But by the time they come up, it'll be 5, 7, 8 years to start doing this. Until 2030, the power of Taiwan as a supplier of semiconductors cannot be replaced by anybody. It's until 2030. That's just 7 years. By then, maybe others will be able to catch up. So this is a very important window. United States wants to make sure that China does not conquer Taiwan and take over all that, okay, which Chinese want to. And so the battle for Taiwan to some extent is a battle for technology. It's a very important thing. The technological war is over semiconductors, over quantum computing. China has been doing a lot of surveillance. They have all these phones and TikTok and various things that they can use to capture information, psychological profile of Americans, how to counter them. China is doing that. And China is also in Africa, by the way, capturing a whole lot of surveillance data, to control the African governments and their dictators and keep them honest by having all their secrets, all their dirty secrets through the surveillance. So the AI is also the ultimate, like the greatest surveillance method that ever existed. You can recognize a face. So you can recognize, because wherever you're going, there's cameras. And in the US and many places, the street lights also have a camera. And they can look at where you were for the last month, every single place where you were. It can be figured out, and there can be a report on where you've been. And this is happening. This is happening because it does not require human beings. And if somebody says that we want to track this one person, wherever he goes, wherever you recognize his face, we want it noted, date, time, where he was, this can be done. So you see, that kind of surveillance is unprecedented in human history. So you can do things about government leaders, you can do things about military leaders, you can track their scientists, you can track their weaknesses, what are their weaknesses. So China is doing all these things, from technology of quantum computing and all this AI to big data, capturing data, all that. So China is also building aircraft carriers. They've just launched some aircraft carriers, which the Americans are very scared of, that this aircraft carrier is on par with the US. And because China has got cheaper manufacturing, they can produce a lot of these. US takes many years to build an aircraft carrier. China takes less time to build an aircraft carrier. And China has built these hypersonic planes. So in all the technologies of the sky, space, sky, sea, underwater, submarines, China is doing very well. They're building a robotic. China has the largest number of robots in the world because they started this evolution. So they're using their robotics also to make robotic soldiers. You will one day have a war in the Himalayas where there'll be robots. They'll put it like 1 lakh robots. What will you do? So this is a scary world. And this is what now the Indian intelligence understands, that this is where we are. And no matter how much we may have problem with US, the point is they got us. They are the only people who can save us with weapons against China.
Okay. All right, sir. Always a pleasure. You are a spicy dude. That's what I will say.
Cool.
I know you're 72.
And
but
you're a cool guy. You're very multifaceted, and you keep me on your toes. And I'm on my toes, and you're also able to go deep and broad. Very few people can do both breadth and depth at the same time, and you can.
Thank you.
And
sir.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. It's almost 500 podcasts, and I feel I was a pretty shit podcaster to begin with. But speaking to people like yourself has just kind of woken up the conversationalist in me. So thank you. It's an honor of my life that I get to talk and learn from people like yourself. All I want to say is that come back soon, sir.
I will come back.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste to you.
That was the episode for today. Over the next couple of weeks, we've got 2 more incredible geopolitics specials of the Ranveer Show. So make sure you're following this podcast very regularly. Please give me feedback on how I can improve these conversations, on what you'd like to know from the guests, whether you'd like longer podcasts, whether you'd like shorter podcasts. As with any of the episodes, I've always taken the game forward based on your feedback. So please let me know, my dear audience members and podcast listeners. For more episodes just like this, make sure you follow us on Spotify. Every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. This was an incredibly heavy geopolitics podcast. And to get rid of that heaviness, meditate, my guys and my girls. My meditation app Level is now live on the App Store and the Play Store. The link given below will take you straight to the place where you can download it from and begin your meditation journey. It's the age of Indian soft power, yoga, meditation, and mental fitness are India's gifts to the world. So please make sure you check out Level. It's got the best of Indian wisdom condensed into one single application on your phone. Lots of love, guys. Thanks for listening. And make sure you tune in next week once again for another incredible geopolitics special of The Ranveer Show.